welcome to today's episode of Rooted in Love, where we talk with both social justice and spiritual healers to talk about what is really needed for our collective liberation and creating a new world that is rooted in love. It is a time of deep inspiration, of awakening, and being able to understand how do we actually end the root of all suffering through people who have gone through it, who are doing the work on the ground and within their own being. And so today we actually had our roles reversed. As some of you may know, I am a documentary filmmaker, and I've been working on this film titled Traces of Home that focuses on healing intergenerational trauma within myself and with my family as a Mexican Palestinian American. And it was such a beautiful conversation I had with a colleague and who has been really supporting Traces of Home's journey, Lavish Mack, and so excited to get to share this conversation about the deeper why of making this film and how we really hope to be able to heal trauma for a much deeper revolutionary reason than doing our own inner healing that can ripple out in ways that we could never expect. And so I really hope you enjoyed this conversation, and if you're excited about the film and want to bring a screening to your own community, feel free to email tracesofhome@gmail.com to be able to get in touch with our team and get the screening into your community. Enjoy.
What's up? This is Lavish here with Colette. We're reversing roles. So starting with like displacement and inheriting others' memories, like on an epigenetic level, how do you think displacement lives on in people who didn't experience it directly?
Something that I started to learn about when I started going to therapy during the production of Traces of Home was intergenerational trauma. And I had never heard about this term or this concept that we actually have trauma stored in our bodies that is not necessarily our own, that we are carrying, like literally in our DNA, that has
Yeah.
shaped us. And that specifically for myself, that it has shaped me growing up as a child of immigrants and refugees in the United States. The idea of specifically loss and grief, and that pain that our parents or our grandparents have gone through because of that displacement is also within ourselves. And it's really fascinating because I feel like our generation is the one that is finally being able to have to like face the pain to be able to go on that healing journey. And that was
Mm.
something that I had to be able to go on to be able to heal not only myself, but my entire family and my lineage. And of course, I'm so grateful for it, but it was quite the emotional journey to do that work. And the other thing that I realized on this journey is that literally everyone in the United States is displaced. So
Yeah,
even Native
true.
Americans, like literally everyone who has come here is disconnected from the land, from their culture in some way or form. And so, like, how does that impact our sense of connection to anything in the US? And it just like with everything happening right now with ICE immigration, that like it feels so clear that of course this level of harm could be possible because of that level of disconnect.
How do you feel like Nakba specifically shows up in your life day to day beyond headlines, news, and history?
With the Nekba, it feels very clear that what we think happened 71 years ago is very, 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 very present in what's happening today. And of course, I recognize my own privilege of growing up in the US, that I am away from that level of trauma. And yet I see it in the disconnect and the displacement from my own family. And that I didn't grow up with any relatives or any cousins because we were all forced to leave. And so it completely destroyed any familial connection to my
Hmm.
cousins, my aunts, my uncles, and that level of hyper isolation that that is very, very difficult for both my father, myself, and like, yeah, even my descendants, like my nephew, he will never really get to know his own cousins and what kind of impact
Hmm.
does that have on his own understanding of his own identity. It's very, very, very hard. And of course, what we see happening in Gaza, like this is just another continuation of the Nakba.
So both of your parents having to flee for different reasons. How do you feel those experiences from your mother and father at an intersection within yourself? Is there a feeling or a way that you see them within yourself?
In this idea of like the disconnect, and that my parents, even though they're coming from two places across the world, from Mexico and Palestine, that they share such similar stories of having to escape their home countries. And that total cutoff from our cultures and our roots, it left me feeling very confused my whole life of like, where do I belong, and my own sense of home, and not knowing why I never felt home in the US. And while going on this journey of making traces of home, it was quite the internal journey of having to figure out that lack of sense of belonging. And I've come to a place after making the film for 9 years where I realize that I actually am able to create that sense of belonging within myself as its own entity of being mixed in the
Mm,
US, that being
mhm,
a third culture kid is its own thing, that that we are the first ones to navigate of
mhm.
how to have that solid sense of wholeness without having that like direct bloodline.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. I totally can relate to that even though like I'm more American or whatever, you know what I mean? Like I've been fourth generation, so it's not like brand new, but just being so racially ambiguous mixed in the United States, you're still
Mhm.
disconnected. When you first started Traces of Home, did you know that you were choosing a film as a place to explore these questions, concepts, and identities?
So I thought that I was just making a film about my parents. Like we were just going to talk about their own escape stories. Again, because I felt like, who am I? What is the point of me telling my own story? I don't have a story. I'm just from the suburbs of Chicago,
Right.
I have nothing to share. And yet realizing that, wait a second, a lot of us have this exact same identity of like, wow, our parents went through so much. And now it's important to actually share our stories. And so
Mhm.
as I went deeper into the film, that's when I realized, okay, wait, this is something that's much more layered around that idea of home for myself, not just for my parents' own
Right.
escape stories.
Now that we're bringing up the inception of the story is about your parents' experience and their home or lack thereof, how did their stories shape what home was for you?
Both my parents had never been back since they were children to either
Oh, wow,
Mexico
yeah.
Palestine. That my mom came when she was 8, and my dad left when he was 4, went to Syria, and then came to the US much later when he was around 35. And they had very big cuts from the entire culture, the language, like all of it was just left behind, that they were like trying to assimilate into the US. And so I didn't grow up with any Spanish or Arabic,
Mhm.
just like very much feeling like a phony in either in either culture, that I was just like, I can't claim either of these because I don't know anything about them. That they were just trying to give me and my brother like the very typical American upbringing. And it makes me, I mean, it's sad because it's like, wow, I have such rich cultures that we just totally cut off from because of
Yep.
need to assimilate and to stay safe in the US, which totally makes sense with, especially with what we're seeing right now, again, with
Yeah,
immigration.
absolutely.
Yeah, why would you want to speak Spanish or Arabic? Like, of course.
Exactly.
And so that reclamation of my own culture, my own languages, like all of it now growing up in my 30s, that it's like, oh, this is essential to be able to decolonize within ourselves, is getting that language and that cultural understanding back too. So that's a huge
And
part.
with that being said, what do you think that you maybe intuitively, epigenetically, just maybe in your consciousness, what do you think that you carry from these places that you were essentially never allowed to fully know?
Wow, that's a beautiful question. The land, it's the land. It's always the land that like I actually had like a really powerful therapy session, and it was all about like that ancestral wisdom and where does that lie, and that it's like, oh, it's in the connection to the land and the trees and the medicines of both places that I know are in me, and yet I have no recollection of, but my body knows it and it feels it and
Mhm.
it weeps for it not being able
Mhm.
to have that connection to the land. Um, so yeah, I think that's the biggest piece.
So, have you ever felt homesick for a places that you've never been to
Yeah,
previously before you visited them?
I don't think I realized it until I got to college. that I was traveling, like, the places I kept choosing were all Latin America and all the Middle East, but I wasn't able to go to Mexico or Palestine because they were on the travel ban advisory. And
Yeah.
I was obviously trying to go back to my own cultures, um, and but couldn't. And then finally was like, okay, I need to be able to go. And so after college is when we went back. But yeah, that there's like this homesickness. Ghorba in Arabic is like this homesickness of leaving the homeland. And it's like it's in our DNA, it's in our roots, especially as Palestinians, that like right of return, all of us, even though we've been so disconnected that we all are like trying to go back however we can.
What do you think maybe gets lost? Maybe not for you, but in general, and then maybe what gets preserved when people's cultures are also so connected to their traumas. Not that the entirety of the my culture is trauma, but maybe because of an escape at such a young age. When they think of, oh, Ciudad de Mexico, your mom thinks painful thoughts. So
Yeah.
what maybe gets lost and what maybe still gets preserved? Food, dance, laughter, jokes, or what clothing or whatever, what maybe gets lost or what gets kept in the heart.
I guess if I can zoom out a little bit, the idea that, you know, being a whole human being, it's sort of inevitable that there's going to be suffering, that it's just like part of the human experience. And so
Right.
for generations, there has been oppression, suffering, all of that that has shaped the culture, the languages, the resilience practices that, you know, of course it feels like there is a loss in not being able to be in that full expression of, especially as Palestinians, of like clothing and food and all of that that has been appropriated, and yet
Yeah.
it still continues, like the culture is still thriving and is still preserved,
Hmm.
which shows that like it just takes on another form again and again and again, um, and that resilience is like in our DNA, which is really powerful to think about, and gives me a lot of hope that it's like, okay, we just keep creating new innovative ways to continue to preserve and to transform the culture.
Was there a time when you realized that what you were feeling almost wasn't even your pain? It was just through your parents and their parents and epigenetically in you. And you're like, why am I feeling this? Was there a time when you recognized this isn't even mine?
Yes, I feel that Traces of Home was sort of like a container to be able to start creating awareness of the patterns in my family, and especially between me and my mom, that we share such similar uh like tendencies and ways of coping with things that I didn't realize wasn't just something that I was carrying. And in the film, I talk about addiction and having these kinds of numbing behaviors to be able to cope with difficult emotions, with trauma. And I didn't realize that that was just something that was carried down from my mom, maybe my grandmother, maybe my great grandmother. Like, I'm not even sure how far back it goes. And thinking that it was something that I needed to figure out on my own, and carrying like shame around my own issues with, specifically around food. And then I realized, wait a second, this isn't even just me. Like, this is a whole social context of trying to deal with the trauma that has happened from domestic violence, from oppression, from colonization, that the nervous system can't handle and is totally
Yeah.
dysregulated. And by doing the healing work for myself, being able to actually share that healing with my mom, like that it's something that we're all carrying, but it's not necessarily even ours in the first place. And so
Right.
I think it created a lot more compassion for both myself and also for my mom, and why she is the way she is.
Yeah, it's not ours, but it's like our responsibility.
Right, right. It's
Um, so
yes.
how do you feel your mother's pain shaped the way that you learned to care for others?
I mean, that's a whole other thing because my grandmother was a single mom. And so she had to take care of everything. Like, she was the main provider, everything. And so I think the same thing happened with my mom, with her as her model, that she was like, oh, I have to become this hyper independent person. I have to do everything by myself and just take care of everyone.
Right.
And then that level of like self I mean, what we could consider selfless service, but it's also more like self abandonment and codependency that
Right, right.
also lived in me. And so realizing, like, okay, actually, what does it look like to be of service, but to do it in a way that still protects my own dignity?
Okay.
That we can be of service to the world and be caring, and yet if we aren't taking care of ourselves, then what are we doing? And so I think a lot of times, like, because Traces of Home is so internal and it's so much about that healing journey, that sometimes it can feel so like, oh, is this even matter? Like, with all of this suffering in the world, like, is this really the way to create change instead of direct action work? And yet it is like the most essential work that we could be doing so that we can show up
Right.
in a different way that breaks the patterns of harm that we're seeing so clearly now in present day.
And with this kind of nervous system, these impacts on our nervous system, whether it's me and community and other people out here fighting right now, and the impacts that's going to have on my or their children versus what your grandma had experienced with your grandfather and down to you. How do you
Mhm.
think trauma can live in the body across generations?
I'm actually getting my somatic coaching certificate right now, and so I'm learning so much about, like, that we store the trauma in our bodies, and that if we don't actually learn how to move and process it through, that it can show up as so much bodily dysfunction, as like stress, as like literally death. And so learning how to actually be able to process through what where has been restricted in our body because we were told not to feel, and that feeling is secondary to just like keeping going and surviving, that
Yeah,
now that we have been given the solid foundation of food, education, all these things, that now it's up to us to actually go back in again and do that healing work through the body.
absolutely. When we think about that as a child, our
Mm,
nervous system is just protecting us. Even if it's coming up with things that are unhealthy, it's just doing it to protect us.
right.
So in that same line of thinking, what emotions or responses do you feel did you feel were behavioral versus like biological in your household?
I mean, yeah, definitely going to Egypt. I studied abroad in Egypt, and I think that also taught me, like, oh wait, there's some like cultural norms that, like, being Arab, like, what does being Arab mean? And then I'm
Right.
like, oh, it's so fascinating, because then I like really understood my dad so much more and how he shows up.
Mhm.
Uh and even the humor, like, my dad is very funny, and I didn't realize that, like, oh wait, this is like an Arab sense of humor. There's like a
Yeah, that's
that's really, really beautiful to witness. That I'm like, again, one of the things that's like a beauty in the passing of the culture, that was just a
right.
pattern that I didn't realize that it was something like, yeah, there's a comedy that is in our culture that's really special.
Mhm.
And then on the opposite side, that I studying abroad and being abroad, living in the Arab world, that I saw just how affectionate and caring our culture is, that there's like this
Right.
tons of physical affection and just like a lot of kindness and warmth. And I didn't realize that that was removed by us being in the US,
Right, right, totally.
that we
Wow.
like really cut that level of intimacy in my family off because
Yeah.
of emotional walls that are not our norm. It's that's a trauma response right there.
I'm
Totally.
sitting across the table from my brother Mo. He's half Palestinian, just like yourself, and his dad and his grandpa also from Suffolk. And I'm thinking right now, yeah, um, and I'm thinking about how his dad is
Oh,
hilarious. His
yeah,
dad is hilarious, and
yeah.
Allah
Mm,
yarhamo, his grandpa Musleh. I
mm.
don't remember him being hilarious, but I remember him being extremely like gentle, like you're saying.
Wow.
And so like caring and soft. So it
Mm,
just makes me think of his dad, who is hilarious. But in the United States, I don't remember his dad being funny in America. His dad
mhm.
lived in America for what, 10, 15 years or something like that, while we were kids, maybe. But I've seen his dad really more out of America than I have here in America.
Oh,
And I'm like, his dad is hilarious, but I never knew it.
yes, yes.
Um,
It's exactly happened with my dad in Palestine. It's wild. But it's like,
yeah, it
wow, they
was,
can be a completely
yeah.
different person when they're actually in their element at home.
Yeah, I love that aspect of your dad's story. Speaking of which, your mother's story really gets talked about and addressed in Traces of Home. However, outside of your dad's dad owning a leather shop and buying two houses, we don't really know anything about your dad's story. Is there anything that you can share or give us insight to about your dad's story?
I know it's again, it's like so sad because it's like it's just been uh nobody talked about anything like when they
Mhm.
moved, when they left. And so a lot of pieces are just lost, which I honestly don't know much. I do know there is one thing I do know, which is that my uncles or my dad's uncles were like huge in the resistance against Israel's occupation and all the Zionists coming in. And so there was already like a lot of resistance fighters within my own lineage, and that they're like written in books. Like the Kunim family were like big fighters. So I was like, oh, that's amazing, like to get to have that in
Wow.
my DNA. Yeah, that resilience, it feels
Do you
really
know
amazing.
anything about the women on your dad's side of the family?
So I know that my grandmother was a very like reserved and a very like quiet woman, that she was just like really, really sweet. And that's the only person that I know about, unfortunately. And I guess that's another thing around the patriarchy that it's like the women's stories aren't preserved as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
know.
so your dad is now 84 years old.
He's 82, 82, but
Okay.
close. Mhm.
So he moved to the United States when he was 35, being in Damascus, making films for years.
Mhm, mhm.
And then he had you when he was in his 40s?
Uh, he was he was
50?
my mom was 38, my dad was 48.
Okay, okay. So did
Mhm.
you ever get to meet your dad's parents?
So, I never got to meet my grandmother, like, later on. I would have absolutely loved to get to meet her. They lived in Syria, and I never went. Um,
Wow.
and my grandfather came when I was around, like, 8 to the US to visit, and he suffered from, well, of course, the medically diagnosed is schizophrenia, so we would
Oh,
have
wow.
hallucinations. Um, and the one memory I have of him is that we were sitting in the living room all together, and then the phone rang, and then he just like grabbed me, and then he totally lost it. And he was like, they're coming to get her. Like the Israelis are coming to get her. Don't let go, don't let go." And my dad didn't know what to do. My mom didn't know what to do. And I was freaking out. He's talking in Arabic. I don't speak Arabic. And so it was like, um, he was just like totally living in his memory of his trauma there. And that's like the core
Wow.
memory I have of him, and being like terrified. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on right now. I don't know what is happening. And now, of course, I understand that this man was like deeply, deeply traumatized. And of course, they'll call it schizophrenia, but that is like
Yeah.
that's PTSD.
Having an experience of your own where your grandfather, who had to escape Palestine because of Nakba, had a trauma response that you were a part of. You recently just saw Shireen's film, All That's Left of You, where Jiddo in that film also had an experience where he's like, the trees are right here when he walks outside of the occupied apartment and he's much older than he was. How did that land for you?
Yeah, it was exactly the same memory. I was shocked when I saw it, that I was like, "What in the world?" You know, like I had never seen that. Like All That's Left of You. I never saw any of my story on screen like that. That
Wow.
uh, like literally, it was the exact same thing. And I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
god, like everyone is traumatized in the exact same way, and like these elderly have not been able to talk about it at all. And then when he starts bringing it up, that the son just like walks away from the table when he starts to try to talk about his own
Yeah.
grief,
Yeah.
like literally could not happen. And then the other pattern that I saw from All That's Left of You was the news, and like the constant watching of news, that it's like there's no break in needing to know all the news of what's happening. And that is literally my dad. He is on Al Jazeera 24/7. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is something that is
Exactly.
uh it's just like needing to know what's going on at all times. But then, of course, it totally ruins their mental health. Oh,
Yeah.
very right.
Nonstop.
Mhm.
It was like the doom scrolling of
Right.
trauma. I saw the film and in New York City right after the premiere of Traces of Home, I saw it there and asked Shireen if she knew about Traces of Home, and she was like, "Yes, our films are kind of like related
Right, right, right.
sister films here. Yours is the
Mhm.
documentary version, and hers is the narrative, which is based on everyone's real life
Mhm.
experience." Traces of Home was not your first film. You had experience making a short in Egypt,
Yes.
but how was the filming process in these occupied places where there's so much trauma held?
So it's something that's really interesting, and I actually mentioned it in the film itself, is around how the camera sort of creates this barrier, this shield of like being able to see things from an outside perspective that
Yeah,
I think it was a very helpful tool to be able to manage my own emotions being in those places. And yet it wasn't, I mean, once we actually got to the houses in Mexico and Palestine, like I totally could not hold
yeah,
that
as we
was
saw
yes,
in
yes,
some moments, right?
I couldn't. The barrier was gone because it was just so personal. Um and it is really fascinating because the reason that I am a documentary filmmaker is because I really do love to understand others' stories. What I love about it is that I can be immersed in another person's story as well. And so while it was different because it's my own parents, there's a dynamic that I had to navigate as a daughter and a director, that it still felt like a very similar process of
Right.
my past films.
When making these films, how do you balance your own self inquiry with caring for the film and the audience? You know, the final product
I see.
versus my
Yes.
experience.
Yes. Yes, that's something that I think a lot of us as filmmakers are trying to navigate of like, okay, what is appealing to audiences or what kind of things would actually be useful for people to understand or know. And it's a tricky balance because I would lean towards just telling your own story. Like for me, I was like, okay, I just have to steal from what I think is important to share and what I need to explore in my own lineage? Oh, I mean, a film is like an immersive experience. You can only go so far. Of course, storytelling is amazing, but by actually getting to see what somebody has experienced and getting to actually like fully live it with them through the power of film, that it is truly, I think, my favorite medium because it is all inclusive of the sights and sensations and just like being able to really feel somebody's story fully by seeing it on screen.
Right.
That like being able to show the VHS footage of my upbringing, like actually getting to put an image to what I'm sharing, uh, that it is so powerful. And that, I think what also is amazing is you can also be able to have like creative expression through film too, versus just having just a story told by verbally, that like we
Right.
added animation to the film, like we added my parents escape stories. There was other ways that we could be able to share.
How do you kind of allow uncertainty to guide the film rather than needing to control it at all times? Kind of just allowing the documentary's process to unfold in real time, which is why oftentimes documentaries take 5, 10, 15 years.
I mean, I definitely knew I wanted it to be a documentary because I was like, okay, well, we're definitely going back to Mexico and Palestine. So I wanted to be able to use that medium to return to both places. And I see the power of narrative and that you're able to create whole entire worlds from scratch that is hard to sometimes have it be as engaging through the documentary
Right.
medium. And yet for this one, I knew I wanted it to be documentary because it was just too compelling of like actual verite scenes to go see Mexico and Palestine from my father's eyes, my mom's eyes, my own experience.
Okay, now I think we're gonna switch over to single word rapid fire kind of prompts.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and no thinking, no explaining, but it's just rooted in the film and your entire experience, right? And it can be right here, we probably want like 15 to 30-second expressions.
Wow. One word.
So I'll give one word, and then
Oh, God.
you go. First
Okay.
word, home.
Home is within ourselves. Home is where we are able to show up in our fullest authentic expression. Home is finally getting to reconnect and be in union within the land, with each other, and within ourselves. And if we believe in the divine with spirit, that home is something much larger than this material world that goes beyond all our understanding, but that we know is a place where there is unconditional love.
A border.
A border is arbitrary. It is something that is created to create a sense of safety. And yet, if it is made in a place of fear versus a place of love, can cause deep, deep harm, which is very apparent now. And yet, there are borders that allow us to stay healthy, safe from harm, and that using that discernment, whether we are creating borders out of love versus fear, is essential.
Process.
Process, what's coming up is process versus outcome, and realizing that it's always the process is where you're going to create the most growth, the most learning, the most evolution within yourself, the most joy, that having the process be the source of fulfillment versus any sort of outcome is truly a practice that has to be learned in the world of decolonization, again, that is so outcome driven and always trying to find solutions versus just being with what is there.
Zatar.
Zatar is home. Zatar is delicious. And there is nothing like it.
Somatic.
It's finally realizing that the mind is not enough for our healing and for our knowing, that the soma, the mind, body, and spirit, is all one. And if we ignore any one part of it, that we will be missing our wholeness and our authenticity. And so coming back to somatic practice is essential for us to finally be in our full aliveness.
Rooted in these somatic workshops that are focused around the premieres. With your 2026 festival run, after your Doc NYC world premiere of Traces of Home, you're not just showing and screening a film, but you're actually having an impact campaign that bridges communities via these somatic workshops that people that often don't have access to such critical, important, heart-centered healing work now have access to alongside a film. Can you talk more about the process of creating it and why you feel it's valuable to have healing along with your film?
Quote that's coming to mind is the idea that we do not get hurt in isolation, and so we cannot heal in isolation.
Mm.
And so being able to have spaces where we can come together as a community to heal is essential for the collective liberation movement. And Traces of Home was that medicine for me and my family to do that healing work together. And now that it has been completed, Traces of Home is now done and has done that work for my family. It is ready to go out into the world as its own medicine, and realizing that the film itself is medicine, and yet there's also ways for us to be able to process through our own traumas, our own emotional walls, our own lack of sense of home within ourselves, in association and with those who are also wanting to do their deeper healing work. And so having these somatic workshops for us to go deeper into, why am I the way I am? Why are my parents the way they are? How do I heal what has happened in my own upbringing and my own conditioning? That is absolutely profound. We had our first pilot workshop in New York during the premiere, and it was transformational for people to actually get to really feel within themselves of my own, sense of home, the walls, all that kind of thing, and doing that to be vulnerable and intimate and authentic connection with another as well. That this is exactly what is needed as the antidote
Yeah.
to the separation of what's happening, of thinking the other person is the other.
Yeah, and I'm so honored to have been a part of that. And we also were graced by Ro
Yep.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
pun intended. And we
Huh.
had our own somatic workshop amongst the team at of Traces of Home. All of your producers, myself, everybody, and it was impromptu and it was magical, and it took us to such a heart-centered space that oftentimes we resist or we don't even want to get to, because we know the path from where we are to getting there can be horrible. But then
It's
once we
terrifying.
get into it, we feel, yes, this is where I'm supposed to be, in this heart-centered, open, strengthened, empowered, and softened, loving space. So
Yeah.
I don't really have a question, but that happened and it was beautiful. But if you have any guidance on how in our daily practice we can get to that heart-centered space that is so nurturing, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you could tell us, hey, I know it's sometimes jumping into that, our nervous system is like, we got to be going, we got to go, 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 to survive or to thrive or to exist in this capitalist uh outdoors. We got people blowing whistles right now outdoors because there could be ice run into this cafe in Minneapolis, legitimately 2 blocks away. Just 3 days ago, they ran into some stores right here. So when our nervous system is, I don't want to say tricking us, but trying to keep us safe, what are some ways that we can get into that heart-centered space and know that these are walls that we're building up to try to fit, but we don't have to fit. We have to feel and love.
It's rare in these kinds of activist organizing spaces for people to actually have the courage to do that inner work. And so I just want to commend you for doing it for yourself too. So beautiful.
Love.
Um, yeah, I the only again the only way is through. The only way is
Mm,
through. And so it's having to actually stop and feel that if we're just on go mode all the time, that we are in a reactive space, we're in a fear-led space, and that does absolutely nothing for being able to create actual change, because
mm,
we're just trying to fight out fires all the time. We're just in fight and flight
mm,
response. And so being able to actually like sit back and process through, whether it be through journaling, through meditation, through going to nature, we're starting to become more vulnerable in our friendships and saying, hey, I'm actually struggling right now and I need to talk about this.
mm,
Up in your sadness and grief, that it it opens up a level of authentic connection within ourselves and with others that is truly where you can find that open, loving connection, which is what we're trying to
absolutely.
in this world. And yeah, I think those are some of the care practices that are really, really, really important. That rest is essential to the resistance movement.
It is. It is for sure. It definitely is. Rest is revolutionary.
There it is. Yes, the Nap Ministry. They're the ones. They know it. They know it well.
Right. Um, taking this kind of intuitive healing somatic practice into our daily situation here in the United States, within the empire, or abroad outside of the empire where imperialism is inevitably going crazy. Um, what are some ways that you could see maybe somatic work improving the lives of people in these conditions when so often it is just survival and go?
Yeah, yeah. And we have to be real about that. Again, it's like coming from a place of privilege to say, like, okay, your house is burning. How are you going to start doing some breathing exercises while your house is literally
Yeah.
burning down? Like we have to be real about how to help people be able to withstand such level of extreme trauma while also being able to fight back. And what's really beautiful is I've been seeing videos on Instagram. Actually, you sent me one of like people doing yoga in Palestine and actually getting
Oh, yes.
have care practices, and you see them doing joy practices, like you see them still living their lives and having the human dignity that is essential to say, like, okay, I'm not just going to back down. Like I can still feel my full joy. I can still be in loving relationships, getting married, all these things that are what we're supposed to be doing as human beings, like having that
Right.
full human experience. And so meeting people where they're at is really, really important. And if they're like in the trauma, it's being able to lean on each other and being able to really be in community that I think is the most important piece. And Palestinians have been doing this forever, and we are learning the same in the resistance movements of mutual aid, learning how to do that.
Thank you. An honor to talk to you, as always. It just talking to you makes me feel like I'm getting more into this heart-centered, slowed down space. So thank you so much just for your time right now. I appreciate it always.
This was a really beautiful conversation. It meant so much to me. Maybe I'll say one last thing is that our next we definitely want to have screenings all over the US. And so if anyone is interested in having Traces of Home come to their city, we have a form through Watermelon Pictures, who is our distributor. The best. We love them so much. And we also are going to be doing more of these somatic workshops across the US. So if that's also something of interest, either to host or to support this trauma healing work, we would love to connect through tracesofhome.com. Yes.
So right now you have Big Sky coming up in February, and that's in Missoula, Montana, and coupled with the screening of your documentary, you'll also have a somatic workshop in Montana.
We really want to. We don't have it filled out yet, but if there is a community org that would want to partner on it, we would absolutely love to do that. So beautiful. Yes, definitely want to make it happen.
And from my own experience, watching the film 6 times, when you go from a somatic workshop led by you, and in New York by Grace, it feels so much different. Could you speak to the importance of the value or the experience of going to some type of healing workshop and then seeing your film?
By us doing that internal work and starting to do that inner reflection, we become much more open to receive the medicine that is Traces of Home. That it's like, okay, after I actually understand my own family story and my own reflection and being in authentic connection with others, that there's this vulnerability that allows the full message of Traces of Home to come through. That was an experiment to see what it would be like to have the workshop.
So true.
It was,
and I cried for 45 minutes straight after, so it works.
Yes, the emotional catharsis. It's the somatic opening. That's what it is. It allows us to create the awareness to have the somatic opening that is essential for our healing. The next vision after Traces of Home, and that is like sort of the funnel into, if people are wanting to go deeper into their own healing work, is a new community called Coco Sanctuary, which I am in the process of creating for those who want to go deeper into somatic healing work, joy practices. I just got my Zumba instructor certificate, which, it's also part of the liberation of joy and dance and reclaiming our own culture. It's all Absolutely. The things. And then yoga. So yes, if people are wanting to go deeper too, they can find out more through tracesofhome.com. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Rooted in Love. Please feel free to share this episode with a friend, subscribe, and leave a rating. Follow along for future episodes on Instagram at Coco Sanctuary, which is also in the show notes. Until next time, please be sure to take intentional moments of pause to be able to stay rooted in love within yourselves and for the community around you.